John chapter 4, you remember he was in the area of Samaria. And let's see back here. All right, so look back here at the map again. You should be getting familiar with this. And so again, this is the main area right here of actually not even that far. This is the main area right here of Jesus' ministry. All right, the Sea of Galilee. We'll zero in on that in the weeks to come as he makes his really base camp, as it were, in Capernaum. We'll talk about that. It's really where he will come from. His ministry will come out of Capernaum, which is right there. All right. Okay, Magdala, Mary of Magdala, Canaan. We're going to be interested in this today. Nazareth, remember, this is where he grew up. We'll be interested in this today. Samaria, this is the area that he was just at. Remember the women at the well. Here's a little picture of it. Very cool. Okay, women at the well. As he was there, sent his disciples into the town to go get groceries. Remember that? Remember that story from last time? You that were here went to send them grocery shopping. All right, and then while they were in the town, this gal came out because Jesus had a divine appointment. In fact, remember what was said in the scriptures, that he must go to Samaria. Went out of his way to go here to meet with this gal. Samaria, right in this area right here. He goes up now to Canaan. This is where he's at right here. Sea of Galilee, Jordan River. We'll do baptisms right there, right about right there is where we do baptisms on the Jordan River today. Down here is where John was doing them in Jesus' day. But the point is this. He goes from Samaria here, right in this area. There is Sychar right there, so it's right there where he was at. He goes up to Canaan. Now, in this area, he's going to be about a year ministering. So it's interesting as we put this together in order, you'll see, you'll just have a few verses, but then when you put it together in chronological order, you see, well, he was in this area for about 9 months in this area. So he's been going around this area, preaching and teaching and the miracles that are happening. He lands then in Cana. All right, so going to our text now, again, Verse 43. Now, after 2 days, he departed from there and went to Galilee. For Jesus himself testified, now listen to this, it's important. Jesus himself testified that a prophet has no honor in his own country. It's like John is getting us ready for what's going to happen next. But I want you to notice here, he has no respect in his own country. They're not going to respect him. In fact, they're going to try to kill him in Nazareth. However, listen to the next verse. So when he came to Galilee, the Galileans received him, having seen all the things he did in Jerusalem at the feast, for they also had gone to the feast. So there was a large group that had gone down to Jerusalem, had seen him. This rabbi, this young rabbi that's speaking like no one else ever spoke before. He was calling God his Father. Nobody prayed like that in Jesus' day. Nobody prayed. Jesus taught us to pray that. Abba, Father. And we'll land on that prayer. We'll learn some things about prayer as we look at how Jesus taught us to pray. Nobody dared got in the face of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Nobody looked at them and called them blind guides, and yet Jesus did. We'll see the things that made him mad. And so people came from all over. Maybe it's because that's something that always had resonated within their hearts, that he's not talking about religion. He's talking about a relationship with a father. Not some distant deity that has no connection with us, and if he does, he's angry, and we got to keep all these rules and regulations that we can't keep anyways. Because remember, the religious leaders had taken the law that God had given in the Old Testament, taken the law and amplified it so large that no one could do it. You can't keep all those laws. So when they heard Jesus speaking about a simple faith and praying, love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, and love each other, and that'll sum it all up. And people heard him gladly. This is what I've been looking for all my life, not religion. Isn't that so true among us still today? Religion just doesn't cut it. I hung out with religious people in my drug days. I tried to be religious. I sat in the office of a pretty well-known priest and said, "Tell me about Jesus." He didn't know what to do with this druggy kid. He wanted to talk about the guys that were doing drugs outside of his monastery. Yes, that's me. But I still want to talk to you about Jesus. I wasn't looking for religion. I was looking for a relationship. I was looking for something more. And when they heard Jesus, they heard it. But listen to this. But those that were religious, Those that had it all together, not only did they not hear him, they were offended at the things that he said. And they didn't want to hear it. They didn't want to hear it. Who does this guy think he is? He's talking about relationship with God. We have the relationship with God, not him. And there's this big fight that goes on over this. But you know this, that when you start talking about Jesus and a relationship with Jesus, understand this, there will be those that will be drawn to him, and there will be those that will fight you on it. There will be those that will reject you. That's part of what you signed up for, if you really did. I think he signed us up. You didn't choose me. He said, I chose you, so that's okay. So you got me now. But now that he's got you, the thing that he has this. He has someone that has to say, you know what? It's the song we sing. Though none go with me, still I will follow. If none goes with me, I'm still going to follow, because sometimes it's hard. Sometimes even Christians don't follow. And I'm still going to follow him. We pray and we sing songs like, Lord, make me like you. Make me a servant, you were a servant, make me one too. And some of these songs that we sing, Lord, make me like you. Do you know what you're praying? You're praying that you'll be a person that, like Jesus was, that was misunderstood, that was rejected. The multitudes were following him, and then 70, and then the 12, and then the 3, Peter, James, and John, seemed to be the closest to him. And then at the cross, how many was there? Maybe 1? They all left him. But he still was going to go. He knew when he went into Galilee, they were going to... Jesus himself testified that a prophet was with no honor in his own country. He knew what was facing him ahead, and he still was going to go. Guys, we need to understand this. It's not always going to be easy, and it doesn't help to be just clicking into religiosity. It really makes all the difference in the world when we click into a relationship with him, because that's what it's all about. And when things get tough, you won't falter because you have a relationship with God. Because people are going to let you down. How many times have you heard me say that? People are going to let you down. In Paul the Apostle's last letter in 2 Timothy, at the very last thing he's talking about, and he knew he was going to die. And in fact, he said, the time of my departure is at hand. He knew that it was almost at the end of this thing. And he starts going through a list, and you can hear some agony in even the things that he wrote there. He said things like Demas. Demas has left us loving the things of this world. Demas, he had been a fellow worker of his, he had said earlier in a letter. And then one time he wrote about Demas, he just said, and Demas is here. It's almost like you could see it kind of faltering. And then at the end of his life, he's left. He's gone into the world. He says, Alexander the coppersmith, that guy, he did me much harm. You better watch out for him. He says a lot of things in that last letter. He says, at my last defense, standing before Nero, he says, at my last defense, nobody stood with me. How sad is that? There's a lot of Christians in that community. Why didn't they stand with him? There's a big church in Rome. There's a big church there was churches that were established, but nobody stood with them. At my last defense, nobody stood with me. But then he said this. The Apostle Paul said, but the Lord stood with me and he strengthened me. So he understood. If it was just a religion, he would have said, nobody stood with me and may they burn in hell. Those guys, those cowards, couldn't they know to keep, instead of saying, you know what, that's okay, because God stood with me. Because the relationship that I have, that's the only thing I need to draw strength from, is from him. Though none go with me, still I will follow. Jesus teaches us this. As he goes, he knows it's going to be hard. Some are going to listen, some are not. So he goes to Canaan. Now, Canaan was where he turned the water into the wine. The last time he was there, it was a celebration. Man, they were partying. Jesus made the best wine. If you want to know about wine in the Bible and should Christians drink wine, you got to get the tape. It's $49.95. No, it's not. It's I don't know what it is. It's actually free. Go to iTunes. Get out there for free. But we talked about the wedding feast at Canaan. So here he comes back. But there's a man over at Capernaum about 20 miles away. He hears about Jesus and he's desperate. He's desperate. First time in celebration, this time in desperation, this man comes. In fact, look at the story. It says here, there's a certain nobleman whose son was sick at Capernaum. A nobleman. Nobleman is, it really means it's under the king. And so he is a political leader, probably very high up. would have been recognized in this time as a political leader. But you know what? It doesn't matter what status you have in life. When your kid is hurting, your kid is hurting. When your kid is sick, your kid is sick. I don't care what status of life you have. And he comes to Jesus. He heard that Jesus was come out of Judea into Galilee, and he went to him and implored him to come down and heal his son, for he was at the point of death. Jesus, come and heal my son. Jesus looks at him. Unless you people see a sign and wonder, you'll by no means believe. They came from all over just to see the tricks that he did. Unless you see a sign. The nobleman said, Sir, this is way beyond this, sir. Sir, come down. My child is dying. My child dies. Now listen to what Jesus does here. Verse 50. Go your way, your son lives. Go your way, your son lives. So the man believed. That took a lot of faith. He's a full day and a half or so walk, from where he's at. And he's going to have to trust Jesus. He's got to believe his words. Your son's going to be okay. Go. Jesus spoke to him. He went his way. Sometimes it's just a word. Sometimes I tell people in hospitals that, it's going to be okay. And I don't mean that God's going to heal them, because he doesn't always. But it's going to be okay because God's okay. Because God is faithful and you can trust him. It's really, really going to be okay, guys. Doesn't matter what this life holds. Someday we're going to be home. Someday this is all going to fade away. Praise God. Bring it. Bring it. Someday this is all going to fade, and we're going to be standing in his presence, and it will really be okay. It will really be okay because he is faithful. Boy, but the pain and the issues that can come in this life, yeah, they're great, but Jesus is greater. Someplace you have to believe. Someplace you have to trust. Someplace you have to take that struggle and give it to him and trust. How much faith did it take for him? Here's an official. He could have grabbed Jesus by the arm and said, no, you're coming with me. But by faith, he has to step out and just start walking. I've got to trust him. Just keep walking. Got to believe in him. Struggling with some stuff. I struggle a lot. Can you tell? I struggle with some stuff, and one of the pastors here, it was right after the movie came out, Little Mermaid. Classic film for if you got kids or grandkids. He came by my office, I was struggling. You know what he said to me? These deep, profound words. He said, just keep swimming, 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 just keep swimming. Finding Nemo, see, I don't know. That was a good movie too. Yes, Finding Nemo. Yes, I know my Disney. You should be watching Disney anyways, that's evil. They support bad stuff, right? Just keep swimming, 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 just How do you walk by faith and not by sight? Is what you do? You keep walking. How do you keep, you keep going down this. You don't stop and say, well, if God was really God, how come he's not delivering me? You don't do that. You keep doing the things that you know to do. You don't do knee-jerk reactions when life hits you. You keep your eyes on him. You do the things you know to do. What do I need to do? What do I know to do? I know to stay in the Word. I know to stay in fellowship. I know to stay in prayer. I know those things, so I stay right there, plowing along. Keep swimming. Keep walking. Keep going. I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to quit. And you know what happens? This is absolutely true. You get on the other side of it. And you look back, don't be surprised if you don't look back at times and say, I don't ever want to do that trial again, but thank you for it because I grew so much. I don't ever want to go through that again, but thank you, God, because I could have never learned those lessons in any other way except going through that. And you get on the other side, and it came to pass. What a glorious thing in our Bible. So the man had to keep walking, believe the words of Jesus. Now as he was now going down, now listen what happens. His servants met him and told him, your son lives. Now he inquired of them, or verse 52 now, of what hour that he got better. They said to him, yesterday at the 7th hour, his fever left him. So for a day and a half, he had been walking, he had been trusting, and following, and Boom. The very minute Jesus said it, it was done. And God answers prayers. Sometimes he answers yes. Sometimes he answers wait. Sometimes he answers no. But he does answer those prayers. And there's a spiritual battle. You read in the book of Daniel where Daniel is praying. And the angel appears to him and says, Daniel, highly favored one, we've heard your prayer. But it's been some time. There was a spiritual battle that went on that hindered this angel from... Remember the story? If not, I'll see you on Wednesday night. We'll get to Daniel in about another 3 months. All right? We're in the middle of Ezekiel right now. Ezekiel will scare the snot out of you. Ezekiel sees some pretty weird stuff. We're just getting to some of that. But in Daniel, as he prayed, your prayers are heard. Know that. 7th hour. His father knew it was at the same hour in which Jesus had said to him, your son lives, and he himself believed in his whole household. This again is the second sign Jesus did when he came out of Judea into Galilee. So it's a second sign here in Capernaum, in this area. Man, his fame is starting to spread. People are coming to him. But now he's going to go, and you can notice the map here. He's going to go home. Home where he grew up, to Nazareth. So I love taking this in chronological order because it takes us now over to Luke chapter 4. So turn with me to Luke chapter 4. Let's continue to follow Jesus on this track. Luke chapter 4, we'll start in verse 14. And I'll show you where to put John 4 in our study here. So it says, Jesus returned in the power of the Spirit to Galilee. News of him went throughout all the regions, all the surrounding regions. The word is going out there. You know, in the Galilee area, there's over 200 little towns that was there. So he was going from town to town to town. In this area, there was just towns everywhere out there. And most of them haven't been excavated yet. Now they're just open fields, and you see a little mound here, a little mound over here, a little mound over here. Those mounds are all old cities that were just buried up. He taught in their synagogues and being glorified by all. Put John chapter 4 in there, Canaan. He comes back from there, he goes to Nazareth, where he had been brought up. And his custom was, he went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day and stood up to read. And he was handed the book of the prophet Isaiah. When it opened the book, he found the place where it was written. So he's there. They're probably pretty excited to see him. He's kind of like this celebrity. He's the guy from the town. He's the homeboy, as it were. He's from the town, and he's pretty famous. So as they began to read, they would ask many times visitors to read. The Apostle Paul will use this as an opportunity to give a testimony. Jesus Christ the Messiah you're looking for, and we're going to have a Bible study tonight, and they try to kill him. I like this guy. But here you have Jesus there, and they're going to read out of the law. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. They're going to read out of the law, and they're going to read out of the prophets. So they have already read the law, and it's a portion. They still do this in synagogues today. They have a portion that they read. This is the law. This is the prophets that read out. So they hand him the scrolls. We're in Isaiah today in our study, in our teaching. And so he's opened the scroll. He finds the place in Isaiah 61 where it is written. And most likely, this is just the text for the day. And listen how powerful it is. It's a very, very clear messianic prophecy. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, Jesus said, reading from Isaiah 61, because he has anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty or deliverance to the captives, and recovery of sight to the blind. He has set at liberty those who are oppressed and proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord. They're all listening to him. One of the things that we miss, if you want to, you can look at this later, is that when you look at Isaiah 61, notice where he stopped. Just a little side note here. Notice where he stopped. He stopped at a comma. In other words, it continues on to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord and the day of the vengeance of our God. And that little comma is 2,000 years. So he stopped there at an appropriate time. Is this important? It is important. This is important when you're studying the Word because there's times one little comma is a pause. Big one coming up in Daniel that we'll look at when we get to that book. Big one. We're in Daniel chapter 9. He's going along and boom, the clock stops. 2,000 years later, it starts again. How do we recognize that? Some of that's pretty easy to spot. It's the first coming and the second coming of Jesus. And this is one of them. A little side note, you can circle it, you can kind of make note of it, maybe look at that later. But he closed the book and gave it back to the attendant and sat down. The eyes of all who were in the synagogue were fixed on him. So he gives the book back, gives the scroll back, and as he sits down, that means he's going to start teaching. I like that. I ought to put a chair up here and I can start just sitting up here. What do you think of that? I'll put a chair up here. Remember Gene Scott? Let's do anybody know who Gene Scott is? Good, 3 of you. Praise God. All right. So Gene Scott, he used to he had a television program. He used to sit up there in his recliner with his cowboy hat and his cigar. It wasn't bad in the beginning. At the end, he got a little weird. Yeah, remember him? Yeah. Us older Christians. Not that I'm older, I'm pretty young. I'm younger than most of you, but yes, I was 3 years old watching that, of course. But when he sat down, all the eyes were on him. What is he going to say? In their mind had to be going through, because he'd already been ministering about a year now, and the fame went all over about him. Had to be going through their mind like, what's he going to do? He's done a bunch of miracles other places. And probably there was an excitement in the room. What's he going to say? You've anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor is the passage. He did preach the gospel to the poor. He did heal the brokenhearted. He did proclaim liberty or deliverance to the captives. He has opened the eyes of a blind man. All these things he's done. But Jesus said to them, today the scripture is fulfilled in your hearing. Can you imagine that? They all bore witness to him and marveled at his gracious words which proceeded out of his mouth. He said, is this not Joseph's son? Today, this is all being fulfilled right here, what we just read. This is being fulfilled. Now, this is the first time he's going to come back again to Nazareth, and they're going to once again want to get him. But here in this particular time, you'll see what's going to happen in just a minute. But could you imagine being in that synagogue and hearing Jesus say that? Now, you've heard me, I apologize to you if you've heard this story before, but this one was really, I couldn't get this before. I didn't get this. It's like, why did they see Jesus as Messiah? I didn't get it. And then we were at a big crusade, it was a big kind of a stadium event, and there was a evangelist, kind of a lay pastor evangelist on the stage. Cameras, had the television cameras going, and he was up there and he says, I have an announcement to make. He says, turn the cameras off. And I was thinking, very cool. I am so glad I'm here. What's he going to do? Turn the cameras off. And then he said this. He says, I'm the second coming of Jesus Christ. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. And then he said, no, really. I am the second coming of Jesus Christ. And he just paused. And this was a big auditorium. You could have heard a pin drop. And I was thinking, and he just waited. It was like you could sense it in the air, this escalation. And I was thinking, this guy, if he does not get off that stage, I'll pull him off that stage myself. You are a blasphemer. You're a liar. And then he said, he was probably 5 minutes away from a full-blown riot there. Not even that, just minutes away from a riot. He said, now do you see how you feel right now? That's how they felt when Jesus said he was the Messiah. That's how they felt. And I go, whew, all right, I don't have to kill you now. That's how they felt. Because if Jesus is not who he says he is, he's insane. We've had people come to our church that believe all kinds of stuff about themselves. We've had people come to the church that say they're John the Baptist. We've had people come to the church that say they're one of the 144,000. We've had people come to the church and say they're one of the 2 witnesses in the book of Revelation. We've had a lot of different people come to the church, and yet I don't think we've had anybody say they're Messiah yet. I hope don't raise your hand. All right. If Jesus is not who he says he is, we got a problem. We got a big problem. Because anybody that proclaims himself to be God and not is God and is not God is a problem. Think about it. But he is exactly who he says he is. He validated on every step and every word and every healing, every miracle. And when he rose from the dead, it was the ultimate validation of all that he said and all that he did. And saving us. I mean, validation after validation of who he is. But they hear this. Isn't this Joseph's son? In fact, in the other passage, when he does this the second time, he's going to say they're going to name 3 of his brothers and his sisters are. He had 5 brothers and sisters, we know. Are they not here? Their family's here. Now, Jesus doesn't help the matter at all. Notice how Jesus could have stopped and said, well, now let me teach you guys about the Messiah and the coming of the Messiah so you'll get it. He doesn't do it. He just gets in their face right up here. I like Jesus. He doesn't have to explain himself. And here he says this. Surely you're going to say a proverb to me, physician, heal yourself. With the things we've heard in Capernaum, do also in your country. You're surely going to say to me, do a miracle, do a trick. We heard about what you're doing over at Capernaum over there. You do it here. Do it here. Do a healing. Come on, Jesus, do something. That's what you're going to say. And then he says this. Gives them a little, remember, they're in church. You want to have a Bible study? Let's have a Bible study then. He says, surely I say to you that no prophet has accepted his own country. Right? That's kind of reiterating what he said earlier. But I tell you truly, many widows were in Israel in the day of Elijah, when the heavens were shut up 3 years and 6 months, and there was a great famine throughout all the land. He's quoting from 1 Kings 17. But none of them was Elijah sent, except to Zarephath in the region of Sidon. To a woman was a widow. Okay, well, we read that story, but what are you getting at? Many lepers were in Israel in the time of Elijah, the prophet, and none of them were cleansed except Naaman the Syrian. 2 Kings 5. They're getting it. We're going to miss it, but they got it, because notice the response. So all those in the synagogue who heard these words were filled with wrath. They were not happy. What is he saying here? He's saying, look, when Elijah come, when Elisha come, they went to these 2 prophets. They didn't go to religious people. They went to the pagans. They went to a gal that was a Gentile. They went to a Syrian that was a Gentile. They didn't go to the religious people. Why is that? Maybe it's the religious people we have a hard time of really hearing the heart of God. We're so religious. You think of Nicodemus that we talked about a few months ago. Nicodemus, man, he was religious, and yet he was lost. He had it all together. He could quote the scriptures. In fact, being a Pharisee, he had memorized Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Wouldn't that be cool? He'd be a good Pharisee. Never mind. No. He had memorized Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. He had memorized those. They still do that today. I met a 15-year-old kid, an Orthodox Jewish boy, 15-year-old boy. He had memorized Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. He had memorized that. I can't even memorize my phone number. I have to write it on the back of my phone because I can't remember my phone number. That's true, by the way. This kid had memorized that. And I'll never forget the conversation that I had with him when I realized this kid, 15-year-old kid, this kid knows his stuff. And I said, do me a favor, can we talk about something? Took him straight over to Daniel 9. Can we talk about the language here? Can we talk about what this is saying? And we walked through that. And we walked that passage line by line. And he talked about the Hebrew language and what it meant. And at the end of that conversation, he goes, you know what? There is something more here. Yes, there is. Yes, there is something. He said he would read the Gospel of Matthew. I lost contact with him. I'm going to look for him in heaven. This kid was smart. So was those in the synagogue. They were listening to Jesus, and they got it. You mean to tell me that God is interested in the pagans instead of us? We're religious. You shut up. It's not about that. It's about us. We are the chosen people. We are the chosen people. And now you're saying, man, they were furious at him. In fact, so much, notice what happens. So all those in the synagogue, when they heard these things, were filled with wrath. And they rose up and thrust him out of the city. And they led him to the brow of the hill on which their city was built. They might throw him down over the cliff. Yet he passed through the midst of them. He went his way. Walked right through the midst of them. Man, you can be so religious and yet so miss the heart of God. You know what? The closer we get to God, the less we become denominational. The less we become, well, they're not doing it right. Because I don't see Jesus like that. I see Jesus continuing to reach out to people. The people that the religious leaders, when a rabbi or religious leader, in fact, they still do this in Israel. This is fun to watch in Israel. They'll be clean. They're going down to the Temple Mount area, and so they'll take their robes and they'll pull them real tight. So not because they brush up against one of you Gentiles. If they brush up against you, they are unclean, and they have to go through this whole ceremonial washing. And that's how they saw it. So first year over there, it's like I wanted to touch one of them. It's like I am so gonna ruin your day, And you see them coming over there, they're all tight, all really pulling their white robes, pull them really tight as they're heading up towards the wall to pray. And it's like I asked the guy who was with the Israeli guide. I said, "Tell me about these guys." He said, "Well, these guys are ceremonially clean, and if they brush up against any Gentiles, they have to go through this whole ceremony again." I said, "Let's get them. Let's get them." Now he wouldn't let me do that, and he had a lot more couth, as my dad used to say. He's got a lot more couth than you, but I don't even know what that means. That's probably a bad word, but do we do that? Do we do that when we just kind of lump up together in church? Do we do that today? And this is all stuff to really consider before God. Do we do that when we just all come together in our synagogue, our church service? It's a very convicting song by John Michael Talbot. It's an old song. It's called "Would You Crucify Him?" I encourage you to Google that. I just read the words of it. If Jesus was to walk today into our church, would we crucify him again? Would we crucify him? Because of our religiosity. Because of, he'd be speaking not like we're hearing today in so many circles. He'd be talking about loving people and getting out there in the street and loving them. He'd be somebody that'd be down at the rescue mission. He'd be someone down in the streets, right down in the midst of them, loving them, touching them, and bringing them to God. Very thing that we don't necessarily do a whole lot in the church. I don't know. I just know this: the more that I follow him, and the more I read this, and I thought for sure going through the life of Christ we could just kind of blow through this. I've been through it a lot, and I tell you what, this is changing me, because as I watch him, and we really listen to what he's doing and what he's saying, man, we say, hey, I do not want to be like those in the synagogue. I do not want to be hardened of heart and not listening, because life is life. Well, so maybe we ought to pray, Lord, help us. Help us to really see people through his eyes.